let me throw a name at you, and you tell me, give me one word to describe this person. You ready?
God, yeah, I'm ready.
Colin Kaepernick.
Well,
one.
I'm looking for one word.
Boy, that's difficult.
It
See,
is.
here's the thing about you.
It is difficult. It is.
Pause, comma, right here. You and I both know, because we hang out all the time, that you usually use about 50 words to my one, and it's the truth. You like to talk.
I'm not going to lie about that.
Well, it's true.
And here I am having a hard time coming up with a word.
Well, no, because if I had said come up with 1,000 words, you'd be off to the races. But one word is difficult for you.
That's true.
But just so everybody knows, we have a safe phrase. We have a safe phrase between you and me.
This is a safe phrase when I'm right and I'm really pummeling you. You got to stop me.
This is
You got to take a breather.
This is 100% because you cannot stop yourself. You don't have a filter and you don't have an off button.
What is that phrase, sir?
The phrase when you are going and I cannot stop you is, how about them Cowboys? When people hear me say, well, you're a big Cowboy fan.
I'm a huge
Cowboy fan. And so when you hear me say, how about them Cowboys? Even if I lean in and interrupt you with that, that means I need you to stop talking for a minute.
Foot in mouth time.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah, I get it. Okay.
All right. So one word for Colin Kaepernick.
You know, courageous with a question mark. Courageous with a question mark.
What does that mean?
Well, you know, you told me this morning that Shaq had said, you know, I just kind of wonder, you know, why now or things like that. Some people are just wondering. They're calling into question timing more than anything.
Yeah.
I don't think it's wrong to make a stand on an issue that has some merit. Okay. So whatever the issue might be, if you really if you're a conscientious objector on a matter that you're really sincere about and you have there's some meat and potatoes there,
sure.
You know, it is somewhat courageous. Again, for me, I got to go back to Muhammad Ali and how many people hated him, hated his guts, and maybe to this day still do, for being a conscientious objector in the war that he was asked to fight.
Right.
And when he and people don't realize that he was willing to throw away his championship belt, the money, go to jail, whatever it took to say.
He gave up the prime years of his boxing career.
And then, of course, you add to it for sports fans like you and me, the prime years of his career, just to find out that he was right. You know, that to find out constitutionally he had every right to do what he did. You know, you don't have to agree with him to this day. You do not have to agree with his position. That's okay. Yeah. That's what this country is meant to do for you, is to say you can agree to disagree, but if he has a constitutional right to do that, then we're going to let him do it. And I believe that there are some checks and balances there when it comes to morality and virtue and things of that effect and modesty. We can get into that later about things that people can do and shouldn't do.
Well, sure. Well, hold on. Oh, so Kaepernick. We agree that he has the right to do what he's doing.
No doubt
sit
about it.
down,
having the right, he has
to
that.
sit down and not stand for the national anthem.
It would be a foolish argument to say he doesn't have the right.
Okay, so personally, for you, do you agree with him?
Well, I believe I'm not going to state that I have a conclusion completely on this matter in terms of whether or not he should himself personally do this. But do I believe the issue should be discussed and he has a point here? Yeah, I think there's more to this than people know. I think there are some other verses in the national anthem that people should talk about and ask more about, you know?
Well, yeah, Star Spangled Banner has like 3 or 4 verses, and there's one that talks about slavery. Yeah, it's just there.
Right.
And you can't, but we don't sing it.
And we don't sing it. And I think that at least, you know, we should understand that in those days, slavery was something that was not only accepted. I mean, it was utilized in many ways.
Francis Scott Key, the guy that wrote the national anthem, was a slave owner.
There you have it. And so the point is that these matters, we can't just erase it or ignore it or pretend that it shouldn't matter.
Right.
And then I think if you fast forward, let's put Kaepernick aside for a minute and talk about, you know, from the 1860s. When Abraham Lincoln signed the proclamation.
Yeah, the Emancipation Proclamation.
Right. You know, that started the real suffering of the black people. in my estimation, because then people were forced to do things they didn't want to do. And so other people, like the African slaves, were forced into places that they had to really, they had no more cover, they had no more, they had to fend for themselves and so on and so forth, but it didn't change their status. For about 100 years, it didn't change their status. Then you fast forward to 1960s America.
Come on.
And if you want to tell me that we didn't have prejudice, racism, and bigotry wide open in the South. I mean, you sat there and you spoke about it with pride. Right. And you want to tell me that's not recent history? We're not talking about the ancient Roman times or the Greek times. We're not talking about the medieval times, and we're not talking about 17th century England here. We're talking about the United States of America in 1963 and 65 and 67. I mean, the Cowboys were already on the scene, And so my point being that I was going to bring up one matter to you. Let me ask you this. Let me ask you a question.
Ask.
How proud could you be of a people who take a little girl, an innocent child, who has to go to school with federal agents guarding her body so that grown Christian men, Bible-wielding grown men, don't hurt her or kill her because she's simply going to a school where there are white people? Right. How do you have pride in that? Yeah. Tell me where Jesus would say that's a good thing you did.
Yeah. See,
not absolutely skewer you and put you in the same category as those leaders in his time and day that were vipers.
So I agree. However, I disagree with you calling them good Christian men. Just as I could bring up.
My apologies.
Yeah. Just as I could say totally ISIS. It doesn't represent Islam.
Completely agree with
that
statement.
So
absolutely.
I don't think those were. They were as far from Christians as you can. They think they're Christians. There's something that I like to tell people.
But you'd have a hard time convincing their family members and their descendants that they weren't Christian men.
No. I think there's a lot of people on this earth, and especially on my side of the aisle with Christianity, that know a lot about God. And they don't know him. That's the difference.
Let's do something. Let's set aside Christianity for a minute. Just say they're good American patriots.
Okay.
They're defenders of what America stands for.
Well, sure.
They're protectors of established institutions.
Sure.
And established ways.
Yeah.
And ways that people should understand and respect. And if you live in America, this is how you should be,
Right.
Well, if you live in America, darn it, you little 12-year-old girl, you should know better than to go to this school because you're black.
Right.
And, and we get back to the godly argument. I've said so many times, I've taught, students, Muslim students in this country, in this city, and I've taught non-Muslim students in this city. I said, what's a bigger injustice? To have prejudice, bigotry, and injustice to a man or a woman who chooses to be Muslim and practices Islam in this country, her Islam in this country, or to a man or a woman who is black, African American, and has to walk around as an African American in this country? What is a bigger injustice? The fact that you've committed your life to God and to live a faithful life to God, should that be a bigger injustice, that they're prejudiced to that, or the fact that you have black skin? What is it?
Well, that's an interesting question, is it? Because
the answer is easy. It's an easy answer.
What do you think the answer is?
It's
because
easy.
I don't think it's that easy.
Oh, it's simple.
What?
It's very easy. For something, it's a
bigger apparently easy for you.
It's a bigger injustice to hate someone and to oppress them for something they had no choice in, and something that God chose for them, because then you're against God. You're not against them. God made the decision to make them African American.
Understand.
God painted their skin, not you.
Sure.
But I made the decision to be Muslim, and I can change my mind tomorrow to save my skin. I could say I'm not Muslim, and you don't have to put me in jail. You don't have to kill me. You don't have to hurt me. But a black man can't change his skin, nor can a black woman. That is a far bigger injustice to a person who can't change the way God made them. And you want to hate them for the way God made them?
Yeah, I hear you.
Who are you hating? Who are you hating on?
Let me ask you a question, because this opens up a whole other line for me. By the way, Colin Kaepernick, courageous. I had somebody that told me, they said, he didn't ask permission of his team. He's being paid by his team, and he didn't ask their permission to open up this hornet's nest.
that's where I said the question mark. There's all these other factors.
From where I sit, though, change doesn't happen when you ask permission. Change happens when you don't ask permission because you know what's right and you go. It's like Rosa Parks didn't ask permission to sit at the front of the bus, right? These things didn't. The African American students didn't ask permission to sit at the lunch counter. They just did. So I applaud him. Now I don't know if his motives are 100% pure because I'm not inside this young man's head, but I say yay because this conversation needs to continue.